Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Valdez, Director of Client Engagement for SBI, and I'd like to welcome you to the SBI podcast. Our guest today is Brendan Cournoyer, Vice President of Marketing for Brainshark. Brendan recently completed a brand transformation, and he's here today to share with his peers the behind-the-scenes view of why and how he made it happen. Stay tuned. From SBI's Executive Briefing Center in Dallas, Texas, the most watched and listened to content in B2B sales and marketing, it's the SBI Podcast with your host, Matt Shares.
Welcome to the SBI Podcast, a weekly show dedicated to helping you make your number. Today, we're going to demonstrate how to create an inspiring brand that tells your strategic story, and we're going to do that in the context of a brand transformation. So this is something that we haven't featured before, that if you are a CMO, if you are a head of sales, if you are a CEO, as you think about brand, as somebody who sees it and lives it, it matters. So why this topic? It's because your competitors are making the same claims and they're making the same promises as you. Sometimes they even use the same words. So brands that are built on who you are and what you do, they don't result in above average revenue growth. And brand impacts revenue growth when it gets activated by the sales force and it becomes uniquely relevant to your customer and your prospects. My name is Matt Shares. I'm the CEO of SBI. I'm also your host. Joining me in the studio, as always, is my beloved co-host, Melissa Valdez. And Melissa's here to point you to resources to advance you along the way to making your number. Hello, Melissa.
Beloved is such a nice word, Matt.
It is a good word. That is you.
Yes,
that's what we do.
Well, thank you, and welcome to our listeners and our viewers.
All right, and Melissa and I are really excited because joining us today is Brendan Cournoyer, and Brendan is the Vice President of Marketing for Brainshark. So, Brendan, welcome to the show. Good to see you, looking very serene and peaceful with that background. And I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience and also introduce what Brainshark does and how the team should think about you guys.
Thanks very much, Matt. Hello, everyone. Yes, it's a serene yet rainy day here in Massachusetts. My name is Brendan Cournoyer. I'm the head of marketing here at Brainshark, Waltham-based company just outside of Boston. And we're a sales enablement and readiness software provider. So I'll talk a little bit about that in regards to what that means for our brand and the brand transformation we went through last year. And excited to be here, excited to talk about this.
So, Brendan, for those that aren't familiar in the space, in very basic terminology, what does Brainshark do for its customers?
So Brainshark supports companies in empowering their sales force with all the knowledge, skills, and information that they need to have the types of conversations with buyers that are going to lead to more closed deals, basically, and really focused in on how salespeople need to prepare to have those conversations. And that can mean the type of content that they need to prepare ahead of time or to share and support the conversations they're having, the training that you need to deliver out to them from new hire onboarding to a continuous basis, and the video coaching and practice reinforcement to make sure that they haven't just completed their training, but you can actually validate that they can demonstrate it and they can do it live when it matters most, and that's when they're in front of a buyer.
Very good. So it's an end-to-end enablement tool that's going to allow me to sell more. Fantastic. All right.
SaaS-based solution.
Fantastic. Okay. And Melissa, the audience is probably going to want to follow along as Brendan and I unpack what we're going to talk about relative to brand transformation. How can they do that?
Yes, those of you listening and watching, hopefully you have your How to Make Your Number for 2018 workbook handy. If you don't have this workbook, press pause, go to sbi.tips/2018 workbook where you can download a copy. And we are in the marketing strategy section today, brand strategy on page 254.
Okay, so we're jumping into the questions. And to give the audience context, Brendan, who is the audience of the Brainshark brand and what does the brand do for them?
So our current audience is anyone who's responsible for sales enablement and enabling their sales force at their organization. Now, the sales enablement function and role is something that we've seen really grow over the last few years. Maybe 6-7 years ago, companies were doing sales enablement, but they didn't have that dedicated function. We're seeing that more and more now, right? But there are still organizations that don't have that designated title, but they still have people at their organizations who are responsible for the enablement, training, content, coaching activities that fall under the sales enablement umbrella. And that comes all the way from your head of sales down to perhaps sales operations, your heads of training, and certainly marketing.
So talk a little bit about that brand audience and what it does.
Yeah, so our brand is really about providing the information, knowledge, and of course technology to help support those activities. And as I mentioned, sales enablement as a function, as a concept, has really it's become more crystallized over the past few years. But there's still a lot of clarity that needs to be added to the market and to the people who are interested in not only doing sales enablement better, but understanding how to invest in the right technologies and solutions to support it. And so our brand is really about helping to provide that clarity in a market that's still continuing to mature.
Yep. So relatively new market, right, is the way you contextualize it, which I think was well said. And here you are, you guys have this established brand. You go in and you execute a brand transformation. Some might be listening to this and saying, that sounds squishy. It sounds pie in the sky like a consumer brand. Shouldn't Brendan just be focusing on delivering leads and not getting distracted? So take us through the approach from the beginning, why the brand was important to get right, and like what was the compelling event and the business need to overhaul the brand? And speak in like basic terms, so those of us that are not at the 400 level of brand management can follow along with you.
So, I mean, we certainly take brand seriously. We think, the brand is the way that you're presenting yourself out to the audience that you're selling to. So you want it to be, presenting the right message. And it's not just a visual thing, but it's also the messaging, the positioning piece of it. That has to be right. That has to be right on. For Brainshark as a company that's, been around since around 2000, at the time of the brand launch, 15, 16 years old, we had a bit of an established brand. But over that time, like most companies, our business has evolved quite a bit. And while we were always supporting our customers with sales enablement, they used Brainshark for a variety of use cases. And over the past few years leading up to the rebrand, our business really began to identify the sales enablement market as a place where we could really add a lot of value, and we're adding a lot of value. And, we wanted to be able to, we began to focus our brand positioning and our product development really in that space. But as you do that, you realize that, your history might be fighting you a little bit. So in order to really go all in and make that statement that we are all in on this market, this is what the company is now. Sometimes you have to be bold. And for us, we decided that we wanted to step away from what our historical brand was and present what this new Brainshark was all about. And that really came to the point where, we were starting to develop more products that were more focused around sales enablement and readiness. We were creating collateral and marketing content and things like that. This was that next step in that journey was, okay, this is who we are. How is our brand going to specifically reflect that story and say that we are all in on this market? And that's where the project began. And it was a long journey from there.
So great answer. So then I guess relative to that journey, when you started the rebranding effort, what process did you go through to audit the brand and what did you find?
Yeah, so I mean, we came in really with two goals for the brand, for the rebrand project. And the first was to, provide clarity to new customers and new audiences that were looking to the sales enablement space about what we were all about. We didn't want there to be confusion between, the Brainshark from 14, 15 years ago. But then also force reconsideration for customers and prospects and audience members that they already knew about Brainshark and already had an opinion or an idea about what we were all about. And sometimes you have to make a bold statement to force that reconsideration. So that's where that rebrand was that's what really instigated that. So with those two goals in mind, the first step was, how do we do this? We have to find someone who knows how to do this and who's done this before, worked with a third-party brand agency. Yeah. And the first thing we did was the first step of the rebrand process was intelligence gathering. And we did both qualitative and quantitative research, both internally and externally. We thought that was really important. We provided a survey that was out to almost 200 people externally and internally, but also performed interviews with key stakeholders within the company and also customers who are familiar with us and prospects that are familiar with us to learn what current brand, the previous brand, meant to them. Like what does Brainshark mean to you? A couple of reasons. You want to see, where you currently stand so you can sort of benchmark your branding, but you also want to get an understanding of the positives, the things that you've built equity that your brand currently possesses. You don't want to lose that. So any new brand that you're going to launch, You want to make sure you're maintaining the things that are still working for you. And we found some really interesting things. We found through our qualitative analysis, we put together word clouds, and we saw the different words and terms that were bubbling up. As in, when you think of Brainshark, what do you think of?
Yeah.
And what we found in the analysis was that some of the core capabilities that Brainshark was known for since its inception, we were really strong at. But there were some of the new things that were under the sales enablement umbrella that still weren't quite resonating with people who were already familiar with us. And we could look at those and be, okay, here's something to build on over here, but here's a real opportunity as we're developing our new brand identity to really focus in on. So that intelligence gathering stage was immensely important and helpful, and it really was the first domino to fall for the entire process.
And as we come to the end of this first segment, Brendan, so I guess quick follow-up question. In doing that intelligence gathering and getting that data, were there a set of assumptions, probably fully formed inside the company at the senior team, that got blown up based on how the market perceived you guys, and because you'd been around for 15 years?
You know what? I actually wouldn't say it did. I think that it really did confirm a lot of the things that we thought might be the case, but it certainly shone a spotlight more on some of those things, maybe more brightly than we were expecting.
Yep.
And I think maybe we had, but what really did, it reinforced the reasoning behind why we wanted to do this rebrand project, because I think maybe we felt we had made even more headway around some of the more sales enablement and readiness focused areas than when we look at the results of this research. We hadn't made as much headway maybe as we had thought. And so it kind of maybe reinforced the reasoning behind, okay, and this is another reason why we really have to take this seriously and why we really want to do this.
Yep. All right. Well, that was a great first segment. Melissa, I think you've got something to share with the team while Brendan and I take a little break. So I'm going to pass it over to you.
I do, Matt. So Happy New Year means happy new number. It's Q1, you've received your new number for the year, and you might be wondering, how am I going to make my number? Well, SBI has developed an interactive tool just for you. It is a web-based self-assessment where you can take 10 to 15 minutes to answer some questions and see how you stack up in the probability of making your number. You get to benchmark your go-to-market strategy against emerging best practices of market leaders. And to get this fantastic tool, I know you're all dying to hear where to get it. It's sbi.tips/revenue growth diagnostic.
Very nice. Always got to point people in the right direction. We've iterated our brand 4 times in 11 years. So, Brendan, I'm smiling while you go through this topic because it is important and it's tough to do. So, welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the SBI podcast. I am your host, Matt Shares. Today's guest is Brendan Cournoyer, who's the Vice President of Marketing for Brainshark. And today, Brendan and I are demonstrating how to create an inspiring brand that tells your strategic story. And we're doing that in the context of the brand transformation that Brendan took the Brainshark team through, which makes this highly topical and contextual as you think about the brand and its role in driving B2B revenue. So, Brendan, we're going to jump back in. So you've now completed your audit. What does the process look like when you develop the new brand? Because people listening are probably like, ugh, that just sounds like a bunch of extra work and I'm already overworked. So talk a little bit about that.
And I totally understand that. I'd say that, each stage got progressively more fun, but that intelligence gathering is just so crucial. But also why it's really helpful to have, a third party. We were very fortunate to have a great agency to work with to do a lot of that work for us and really guide us along the way. But you're right. You've done all this intelligence gathering. Now, what do you do with it? So the first stage from there was really we did like a full day workshop, collaborative meeting with the agency and with the key stakeholders in the company, looking at the data and being, okay, what does this mean? What do we want to pull out of this? And what are the messages and positioning, and how do we want to position things going forward in alignment with what we're seeing in this data information here? Like I said, what are the things that are good about our existing brand that we want to maintain, and what are the new things that we want to add? And that's just a lot of spitballing and throwing ideas up on the wall, and you start to see the beginnings of your new messaging framework and your new positioning framework start to take shape. And you do all that, and you take it into the next stage, which was really what we described as what was described to us as our governing brand identity. Right. And this was the part to me that going in I thought was a little bit squishy, because these are things like your brand values, energizing or playful or knowledgeable, things like that. And I'm like, oh, it's okay. But we realized that over time we just kept going back to that. This identity really informs everything that you do going forward. Yeah. It's also where you develop, the style of messaging. There's some messaging that's a little bit lighter, a little bit jokier. There's some messaging that's a little bit more straightforward and professional. Where do you fit in that spectrum? What's your top level sort of description of the business and of the brand? So you start defining all of these things, and these aren't intended to be public-facing things. These are the things that you use and the concepts you use to inform what eventually you will unveil to the rest of the world. Yeah. And then you take all that and you iterate on that until you're happy with it. And then that's when you get into the fun stuff, which I thought was the fun stuff. Choosing how do we visually represent this, and how do we represent this with messaging and positioning? And that's when you start choosing the new logo and colors and new stories that you're going to tell and new content that you're going to create. That's when you start to really see the brand come to life. And that, to me, was the most fun part. Yeah. And I think for most of us here, that was the most exciting.
So is it safe to say, Brendan, that when you started the journey, you weren't sure if you needed to perform a complete overhaul? Then you did the analysis and the discovery, and you let the data lead you down to that point. Is that a fair conclusion?
Yeah. I don't think that we knew really what was going to be the result at the beginning. I can't say that we knew where we were going to end up. I think, and there was a lot of things on the table. But I think the more we went through it, we realized that, there were certain things that we really wanted to do in accordance with the intelligence that we gathered. And one of them was be bold. Yeah. So anyone who knew the old Brainshark brand, it was blue. We had an icon. It was a little bit playful. And there was a lot of different things about that. And we were like, we're going to take this in a different direction. We're going red. You can't go more opposite than blue than red, which sounds silly. You're talking about colors, but there was reasoning behind everything. And we recognize that to really, if you're going to be all in on something, you'd have to be all in on something. And we really believed in this market. We believed in the offering we had behind it. And we wanted that brand to make that bold statement. So as we went on, we realized, we do have to change a lot of things. But then you very quickly realize you have to change a lot of things, more things than you might realize. I'm thinking, we have to create some new content. We'll get a new logo, but we need to get a new sign out in the lobby. We need to get new business cards. To change the template that the support team uses 3 times a week that I've never seen in my life. We need to build a new website, stuff like that it starts to pile on. And thankfully, we've had some very talented and committed project managers to help us through that. But it's a big project, not one to be taken lightly, but I think we felt like it was a necessary one. It certainly is as the process went.
Probably had to order new sweatshirts, new golf shirts, new mugs. Right? You got to get all the tchotchkes and gear. Everybody gets new gear. So,
absolutely.
So then knowing that and knowing the size of the effort, let's talk a little bit about launch. And let's pick on the sales force. How did you launch the brand internally to get the sales force engaged?
So I'm so glad we're talking about this, because this is a really important piece. And it's another one that just me and maybe in my naivete thought, an internal launch, can't we just unveil it to everyone at the same time? Like, I'd never done this before. And oh my goodness, it is so important to launch the brand internally and to do it ahead of time. And so what we ended up doing, we ended up launching the brand internally a little less than 2 months before we unveiled it to the rest of the world. It timed out well, where we were able to do it at our annual kickoff in that January. And so we were actually at Fenway Park, which added a little bit more pizzazz to it. And we decided, you know what, you want the team to feel enthusiastic about the new brand. You also want to give them time to get used to it, to ask questions, to update any of their collateral and things that they're going to need to use. You need to give them that kind of time, but you also want to create enthusiasm. One thing we did that I thought was kind of cool, and this was a suggestion by our brand agency, was to build excitement and intrigue leading up to the big unveiling, because for the most part, no one had seen this yet. There was a very small contingent who had actually seen what the new logo was going to look like and what our new positioning would be. We created a series of fake rejected logos, and these were kind of logo parodies of popular brands that you've seen, like Apple and McDonald's and Home Depot. And we created these fake ones. Basically, so what would it look like is a Brainshark version of McDonald's, and the tagline would be "I'm selling it" instead of "I'm loving it." Stuff like that, which was kind of funny.
Oh, that's cool.
And we created a series of these. And in the week leading up to the kickoff, every morning we would just hang them up around the office. We wouldn't talk about them, wouldn't draw attention to them. We just hang them up throughout the office, and there'd be like a rejected number, like option number 3, or that kind of thing. And people were starting to be like, what is all this? And over time, they started to catch on, like, oh, something cool is going to be unveiled at kickoff. We went to the event. Everything had our old branding. We had monitors up. Everything had our old branding. And we actually created this really great video, this really cool high production video that was meant to introduce the new Brainshark brand. Yeah. And at the very end of it, the logo comes up. And as the logo comes up on the video, the monitors all changed. The big screen up in Fenway Park Center Field changed. Music played.
That is cool.
It sounds like a big show, and it sounds a little bit, I can see people maybe rolling their eyes a little bit, but it was fun. And you want to the idea is to create that enthusiasm around the launch, because you want everyone to feel really good about it, because they have to live this brand. Everyone that works at the company, salespeople most of all, who are, they're representing the brand. So they have to get comfortable with it, and they want to feel good and positive about it. And then from there, it's passing out the tchotchkes and your new jackets and notebooks and pens and all of that sort of stuff. But again, like I said, we did it about 2 months before we did the external launch, and that gave everyone time. Yes, now they felt excited about it, but of course there were going to be questions. Of course there were going to be things we didn't think of that needed to be updated. And that gave us that leeway to take care of that and help everyone get comfortable with it by the time the rest of the world was ready to see it.
So it sounds like you nailed the internal launch. Love the trip to Fenway Park. So talk about not sparing any sizzle. Talk to me, and it sounded like there's about 2 months between internal and external. Talk about how you launched the brand externally before we head to our break.
Again, a little naivete on my part. I think, okay, we just turn everything on, and that's our new brand. And in some places that was the case. We had our launch date, and that was the date when we turned the new website on, and we update all of our social profiles and all of our content changes, and we certainly did that. But there was some lead up to that as well. Thinking about the customers and that who we spoke to as part of our initial stage intelligence gathering, we wanted to show them the results of this and give them an opportunity to kind of see, all right, here's where we landed, and this is what our new brand is, and get them the opportunity to ask questions. We met with analysts who were covering the space, who were familiar with our existing brand, and we previewed it for them, and gave them the opportunity to ask questions and walk them through the process of why we were doing this versus that. Other key stakeholders and thought leaders in the space, we did the same thing as well. And I thought that was really valuable and really useful. So when we do turn everything on, it's not a shock to some of the people who you really want to forge relationships in the space, and certainly many of your customers. We were able to, in fact, I think I'm remembering now, we actually believe we sent a sort of a wider customer communication about a week before, so that everyone could kind of get a look at it. So those things leading up to the external launch that are also all part of the external launch, right. Really important, is something I didn't consider, at the very beginning, but I realized how important it was to the process.
All right, so we're going to take another break. That was a great segment, and as Brendan laid out to people, when you're going on a transformation, you can either let the brand escape or you can launch it correctly, and bifurcating that between internal and external and how you lead up to that. And Brendan, the other thing that I really gathered from listening to you is how you made people feel, both internally and externally. So the concept of the emotional narrative and this personalization of a B2B brand and how it interacts with customers, it's all about personal. The way, McDonald's makes somebody feel, the way Starbucks makes somebody feel, right? You guys really did a great job of paying attention to the emotions, and I think that's critical, which is obviously why you're having the success you're having. So, Melissa, relative to making things personal, I think you have something for the audience.
I can't get past this whole Fenway Park extravaganza.
Yes,
spoken like a true Boston fan.
We're jealous. Very jealous.
Well, we have AT&T Stadium here, so there's the shameless plug for the stadium. Thank you very much. If any of you if anything Brendan has said has resonated with any of you in the audience regarding brand strategy and rebranding, and you're wondering how you can go about this on your own, you can enlist SBI's team of experts to help you out. Consider an interactive workshop with one of our team members, and I personally invite you to do that here at the studio in Dallas. Now, it's not a sports venue, but it's a pretty cool venue, actually. If you
we have some fun in here.
Yes, if anyone, any testimonials, you'll see that people really enjoy coming here. So I invite you to come down, have an interactive workshop with one of our subject matter experts, and to get a feel for what's covered in the workshop. If you have not already downloaded the workbook, the official workbook of the studio, it is at sbi.tips/2018 workbook.
All right, this is our last segment with Brendan, demonstrating brand strategy and planning in the context of a brand transformation, which he successfully pulled off and did it with a nice level of vulnerability. As he said, hey, I wasn't quite sure what to expect and the size of it, but talk about all the learnings that he captured along the way that he's kind enough to share with us. So, Brendan, we're on the home stretch. I want to jump back into the questions. Talk to us about the 360-degree picture of the world that your brand lives and acts in.
I mean, it's everything. Your brand is everything. And before I even get into the details, your brand is how you're positioning things at a marketing level, a campaign level, all of the activities you're doing to capture the attention of the people that you want to talk to. That's your brand, but that has to carry over consistently all the way down to the conversations your salespeople are having. So it lives everywhere. We talk about, you change your logo or you change your colors or you change your website. You're changing the way you talk about your company, you talk about your offerings, and that impacts the way salespeople in your sales force, or really any of your public-facing employees, your customer success teams and your renewal reps and things like that. How do they talk about your business? As a part of this, we talked about positioning. Your corporate pitch changes as a result of that. The collateral that you're giving to the sales force to help that support the conversations they have changes. The way you position against competitors is going to change because of this. It lives everywhere. And so I think sometimes people think of brand and they think of the colors and they think of the pictures and they think of the logos. It's so much more than that. And everything has to work together. And for us, we were really trying to be as aware as we possibly could about all the different places this needed to touch. Now, I made the joke about, you have to change the lobby sign and get new business cards, but it's valid. It's a very long list, and these are all things that impact different people. So we have to update all of the content. There's new content you have to create, but there's existing content that now has to be updated to reflect your brand, and you have to prioritize that because there's no way you can do it all at once. Yeah. So we definitely did that in stages. But there's your social media presence. There's the events you go to, and the booths that you have when you sponsor trade shows. There's the gear that people wear. There's the T-shirts and polo shirts. There's the tchotchkes that you send out. There's email templates and PowerPoint templates and Word doc templates, and making sure everything's consistent so that there's no confusion about who you are and what you're all about.
Yeah.
For us, it was even the office. We changed the way the office looked. We've rebranded our office in new colors and put up decals and really made the office an extension of our brand and an extension of our website. It lives really everywhere, and it permeates throughout so many of the things that you do.
So, Brendan, the next time you do one of those, I better make sure that I've got SBI in the consideration set for the company that you hire to help you, because, man, you took it all the way. So that whatever agency was working with you, I'm sure they enjoyed that the entire engagement. But all kidding aside, when you think about the brand impression now, how does it differ from that of your competitors?
Yeah, and I'll just follow up on what you said there too. I'm almost amazed that I can remember all of this, because I make the joke that I blacked out for a good 2 months during this process. Yeah. It was so much work, but yeah. So hopefully we're not doing it again anytime soon. We're really pleased with the results from a competitive standpoint.
Yep.
I think going through the process, the intelligence gathering and the positioning and all that pre-work, it really helped us also shine a light on the things that we knew that we consider differentiators and things that we really wanted to make sure were emphasized as part of our brand. The fact that, we were a 15, 16-year-old company at the time of this transformation, creates a challenge, because that's a lot of, you're making a big change from a brand standpoint. But it's also, we consider that an advantage as well in the fact that, we have, an offering that's been proven over more time than some of our younger competitors. So emphasizing the fact that we have this, proven enterprise solution that, was built by a company that's been around for a while and knows a thing or two. That's become part of our brand, and certainly something that we consider worth highlighting in regards to some of the other competitors maybe in the space. So things like that I think are important, but also there's also just the style. There are different styles. Some competitors, like I said, have more of a playful style. Salesforce.com isn't a competitor, but they have animated characters and illustrations and things like that, and that's part of their brand.
Yeah.
We have a different brand from some of our competitors. Like I said, way back when about 5 minutes ago, when I was defining the governing brand identity, and I said it sounded a little squishy when I first heard about it. I realized how important it was.
Yep.
Those core values that we decided, that we're leading on, you can go either playful or you can go with more professional. You can go with energizing and knowledgeable. You can go with these different things. And they translate into your visual style, the types of photography you use, the types of the way you position your message. That stuff is different in style than I believe some of our competitors. And it's not accidental. It's very intentionally so, because I think we believe it speaks to the value and strength of our brand and positions it in a way that we want it to be reflected.
Yeah. So if you looking back at the process now, one or two things you would do differently?
Oh yeah. It was. This was a very new experience for everyone, and there were a lot of lessons learned along the way. One thing would be time. Take the time to really do this right, because we did it very, very quickly. I think we had the initial meetings took place, if not late June, early July, 2015, and we launched the first week of March. Which once you get to, a lot has to happen after those initial conversations. Yeah. That's a very quick turnaround time. I've heard of companies that spend 8 months just building the new website.
2 months is fast, man. That's quick.
Yeah. So we started in June and all the way in through March when it finally was unveiled to the world. But like I said, 2 months to launch it externally, that cuts down on some time as well. So we did it accelerated timeline. If I had to do it over again, I would definitely let's plan on how much time that we're really going to need to make sure that we're crossing all the T's and dotting our I's, because it's always going to be a lot more than you initially anticipate.
Yep.
And then the second thing I think would be remember to be really thoughtful about every decision you make in the early stages, because those things are going to carry over. Things that you may not think about, your font style. I didn't think very much about our font style. We kind of sat down and picked one. And but once you make that decision, that carries through to all the collateral and all the things that you're doing. If you decide that font doesn't look very good, it sounds silly, but it's a decision that you have to make ahead of time. Make sure you're being thoughtful about it, because it's going to reflect all the things that you do afterwards.
Yep.
And that means every single thing that you do. There was one day I can remember vividly, we were choosing our shade of red, and it's just me. It was surreal. It was me and our CEO and our company founder and a couple other people, our CMO at the time. And we just had a table full of swatches of just like, they all looked the same to me. And really just literally spending an hour picking out the perfect shade of red. It's insane, but it's the level of thoughtfulness you have to put into some of this stuff, because that decision is how you're going to look and how you're going to appear in everything that you do afterwards. So the first lesson would be, make sure you're taking the time you need, because this isn't something that you want to rush through. And the second is to always be conscious of being really thoughtful about the decisions you make, because they're going to matter later.
All right, so last question, because I'm all about outcomes, as everybody who works at SBI knows. So early results of the rebranding effort, what are they? If we could point to a couple.
Yeah, I think, the results, I'll point back to the initial goals that we had, right? And the first one was really to position ourselves clearly within this sales enablement space. And almost immediately when we unveiled the brand and when we went to our first event and people started to see it, they started to see the new messaging and positioning that we had worked so hard on. And they saw this new brand identity, and it immediately allowed us to really have better, more straightforward conversations with, new potential buyers or people interested in the space about who we were.
Yeah.
We didn't have to be held down or weighted down by our history anymore and being like, yes, but we also do this. This is what we were all about. So that provided that clarity, and we saw it immediately in the conversations we had and the events that we went to that year and the conversations that we began to have with buyers throughout the year. So that was one thing that I thought was really valuable and we were really pleased with. But then the second thing, the other goal, was forcing that reconsideration for people who are already familiar with Brainshark and having them think, oh, there's something new here. And we saw that as well. People were like, "Oh my goodness! Look at you guys!
Yeah.
What's going on?" It just the new look and appearance created that question and encouraged them to ask that question, and allowed us to get to having the types of conversations with people who thought of us as one thing. We started to be able to shift that more easily into the conversations that we really wanted to have and the things that we really cared about. And so in terms of both of those initial goals, the early results we saw, in the months after the brand was launched, were great. We were really pleased with it. It was really what we were looking to accomplish there.
Great. Brendan, I got to tell you, that was a fantastic demonstration. And to not only talk about brand and brand creation, but to actually have you talk authentically about a transformation, what you went through, express a little vulnerability on maybe where you might have got stuck once or twice, and then also coming out the other side. So big thanks from myself, Melissa, the SBI community. And obviously I want to thank the audience for tuning in. You have a choice where you send your ears and eyes, and the fact that you would spend some time with us is great. And in the spirit of greatness and colors, you talked about red. Melissa's got dazzling red on today, so I don't know if that was planned, but she is rocking red today. And Melissa, I think you've got one more treat for the audience.
Big fan of red, definitely. But for those of you listening, I invite you to be a member of the SBI community. We are always looking for wonderful guests to feature on our podcast and our show. And we know a lot of people, but we don't know everyone. We can only feature just about 100 guests per year. So if you have a compelling story that you would like to share in the world of B2B sales and marketing, I personally invite you to connect with me. You can do so either through our website at salesbenchmarkindex.com, or you can just simply look me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with you either way. So if you're out there listening, I encourage you to share your story with us. The other thing, Matt, I want to share is if you are not already registered for content through SBI, please go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/register. And there you can personalize your experience with SBI's content. You can select topics of interest to you, whether it's branding or other topics, and you can select the frequency in which you want to receive content. And that's all I got for today.
All right, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
And we are both wearing red, so apparently it's all about red.
Great minds think alike.
All right, folks, so that's it for today. As always, until next time, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on the studio, SBI's Executive Briefing Center, our team, or to schedule a workshop, please visit salesbenchmarkindex.com.